hurt somebody. And as I'm evolving into becoming a love and intimacy expert and sharing what that looks like to open your heart and to feel safe, I'm just wondering, do you ever feel that what you're sharing might be inappropriate for people at the time of their evolution, and that they might take it on and use it as a way of creating more pain as opposed to a way of creating more freedom?
This is a personal question to me.
Yeah, like, have you ever navigated that before and dealt with, like, and is this appropriate to share with this person because of my teachings, and I'm encouraging people to do experiments and going out there, and I feel like I'm going to be attacked, but also I feel like I'm going to take them down a road that they shouldn't be on.
Okay, I think I hear you. If I don't come across as having heard you, just let me know. It's a very interesting comment. I'm quite overt these days about don't follow me. You weren't here in the beginning. I was very overt about don't believe things I say other than through your own direct experience. I've disavowed the label teacher as close as I can get as friend. These are the struggles that I have. I try to lead with my own transparency, show by example. I kind of like the fact that I'm who I am, doing what I'm doing, the way that I'm doing it. Could it be go amok? Anything's possible, but I don't have that issue. I see that I have that issue with other people because I see the utter corruption in most people who are teachers and guides that you're bringing up. You are leading them down a road of horror for one reason. It's not that you're believing your dogma alone, but you're living a lie in a lot of these cases. And so self-deception are very important portals to bring mindful intelligence into. If I were to ask, what's the best safeguard for us to have the most intimate, trusting relationship, is for you and I both to have high regard, which I've said, trust, safety, integrity, and conscience, transparency, reciprocity. If we have a relationship energetically to those 6 domains, we have a pretty cool relationship. I'll listen, you speak. I speak, you listen. We fulfill the commitment to elegant evolution together. That's a 3-minute little bit of a rave for how to safeguard against the things you're doing. I think if we do that with each other, then we minimize the not walking my talk story. And equal to that, watching power imbalances, watching projection. So how to introduce the energy of power into consciousness. What is it? What is imbalance as an energy? Specifically, the study of projection. I don't know how many of you meet people or are in relationships with people where projection is kept off the psychic emotional table. How do you see me? And let me validate either that scene more authentically or help evolve it with you, and I'll do the same with you. So in my transparency, high quality sharing in that particular day or week, we include where we are in collusion, like you and I in our relationship together. Alan, do you feel that you collude with me anywhere? It'd be a very intimate thing. I'd say, Colleen, just about everything you say I'm colluding with, because I disagree with everything you say. I never knew that. How were you able to hide that? It's because I'm just coming out of my inability to be a pleaser. Well, Alan, I want you to trust our relationship to be safe enough that you don't have to do that. Says, Colleen, thank you. Let's just make that note. I want you to feel the same. So if we do this kind of resurrection, reconciliation, elevation, weekly or monthly, even in our friendships, we've got an evolving beauty. So we safeguard. But when it comes to trainings and gurus and power brokers and all the various metaphors of Deepak and all that kind of stuff, 7 steps to fucking awakening, and it's too much for me. The era of the teacher like that is just so 2 days ago. It's like, go fucking put your head up your ass and just, do it. Be in the now forever. Leave me alone. There's just something so done about that hierarchy of the male teacher, shaman, Mr. Peruvian medicine guru. I mean, anything in those areas, I think it should be just turned over to the woman right now. So that's one way to also satirically come way back around. I mean, the Catholic Church, 180 priests decided on whether to have women involved or not. Thank you very much. Talk about, that is like ultimate spiritual psycho-religious fascism. That's like Big Brother in the worst attire. The whole thing is fucking dysfunctional. The whole thing from the top down, the Pope should basically say, listen, there's been so much predation, so much pedophilia, so much dying, lying. I'm going to like take a hiatus. The whole priesthood worldwide, we're going to go to Ubud, we're going to go to Akasha, we're going to take our robes off, we're going to do contact dance, we're going to do really what ayahuasca is meant to do, we're going to purge our fucking sins, we're going to listen to a panel of elder women on what we need to do to empower the feminine, then maybe we'll go back and reform the church and call it the power of the woman. How come I can say that? That bullshit is where it's at. What you and I do and the little shadow stuff that we get stuck in is almost insignificant compared to the real issues on the planet today. We're going down the tubes. We've fucked up the ozone in a handbasket. We're on the precipice of falling over the cliff of an extinction. So let's not worry too much about misleading beauty into the slightest shadow of this plumeria that's so fragrant, when the real issues are to evoke together a solidarity that looks outward rather than only at each other and says, where's the outrages? Where's our mystical activism? How can we embody the new expression of the Gandhi, the King, the Aung San Suu Kyi? The new goddess in the world has fire in her hands. Where's the outrage in you? So that we listen to your honesty, not just play in psychological language, but where's your ferocity? So a lot of these things that happen with the fear of me being too good and colluding, misleading people, for me, I'm not trying to insult you in any way, I really like you, is how we've been co-opted by capitalism. And I would really invite a deeper dialogue about that and how transactional presence is being strangely, perversely empowered over the authenticity of a human experience. And a lot of the teachers today are corrupted, not just by the not walking your emotional spiritual talk, but by money and very low-level power. But they really think of it as ethical power, and they have big followings, they have big endowments, they have unlimited retreatants who have long waiting lists, numbers, numbers, numbers. Numbers, numbers, numbers. And I just invite all of us to really see where we've been infiltrated by numbers. I think a lot of the things that we often speak about are denial of our inherent addictions, and I use this word, Kylie, very cautiously, to capitalism and money. And the power that comes from that kind of psychic power. Having wealth, money, is a psychic power. You can fly first class. You don't have to do a crowdfunding campaign to take a cab to Ubud. I mean, I live in perpetual fear of not having enough. Who doesn't? It's always there. It's always you know what I mean? That's more of the corruption where I feel like, why am I so co-opted by this fucking machinery of transactional need? How much should I take for offering something like this as a gift? There's a lot of blowback. And not from people only here or who've come, but those who charge. Oh, he just doesn't really understand how he demonizes money because he was a monk for a long time. Same way he does with celibacy. It's amazing how we marginalize each other based on not really being more honest about something deeper. So I'd invite you, what is the concern really in your heart? Is that really the concern? Not just you, but all of us. What's the deeper texture? What's the deeper patterning here? And am I afraid of being called out? Is it my inner fraud that's being exposed? Do I feel inadequate to what I've presented publicly? Is there a gap in there? What's that chasm between authenticity and reality? Examine the gap between what you present and who you are. This is why I go overboard with saying things about my life. I want to not think about yesterday. I can sleep tonight and die. I'm not afraid of you. And yes, I can make mistakes, and hold me accountable. Help me be accountable, that kind of thing. So I'm your ally. If you ever want to check that out, let us be an example of these kind of things together. Margaret?
You brought up something interesting earlier on when you said, I love you. I don't know you, but I love you. And I've been working with a friend on what is relating. And what we came up with, we don't feel safe. We're not in our bodies. We've got agendas for a lot of things. We're disconnected, we're disassociated. And unless I'm really in my body and present and, I don't even know, I don't know you. So I can probably say, intellectually, I think there's a great connection. But we go around saying these words like, I love you. And as I said, we don't know ourselves, So I'm just curious to know.
Margaret, you're always just so spot on. I love you. I love that you can always resurrect
You
my...
love me.
I do. I will say I do. I really like you a lot. But I like you.
Yeah.
You're right about the love part.
Yeah.
You might convince me that it's inappropriate.
No, I've been looking at it
I hear it.
myself, because I go around hugging people and I love hugs. But I've noticed when I hug somebody, is there an agenda? Isn't there? Why are we doing this? So that's why I'm just.
Yeah, I'm not a great hugger personally. I'm not. So just keep away. Now we're even again. I'm one of the worst huggers. Especially when it's hot in Ubud, it's like sweaty. And I like energy. After the pool, after a hot tub, hanging out with wine, chilling. I like that part.
So what we're saying is I love your energy. So that's kind of.
We can refine it. Yeah, that's cool. Cool. I'm still hoping for that $25 a month on Patreon. Love me more than that. Words are one thing, Margaret. Put it where it matters. Hopeless.
Change the subject. No, I'm not going.
It's interesting where I was going inside of myself when you were speaking. And it's not any kind of psychological one-up womanship or one-upship, but it's like, where does this matter to me, what you're saying? And I'm thinking that, two things. How genuine are you, Alan, in what you do and say? And how immediate is that genuinity on the terms of a felt true experience? And there's gradations, isn't there? I mean, if we were in a life and death moment here, we're all saying, I love you, and the tsunami is just on the other side of Cyan. We're in that final evolutional next reformation moment where is there a word beyond poignant? Divinity made real on the terms of who you've been in your life and who we are now. That high stakes energy I really like. When I've ever done the various forms of revolution in medicine, what I like about it is the upsurge of revolutionary presence. I am now going into a heightened dimensionality of immediacy and felt emotional integrity and this heightened sense of shared relational wisdom that's being opened to. I like that. I like it in meditative spaces. I like it in group spaces. I would assume if I did more dance, I'd like it in more dance spaces. I love it as a lover to be in that level of elevated space. So can I bring all of those things more to the forefront of my space here and now? And so I bring in what's needed to bring today to the best possible fruition hour by hour. I don't want to say minute by minute, but I do like minute by minute. I do like chosen words. So if you are connected to the aesthetics of now time poetry, and you're in the world of the spoken energetic sharing poetry, and you now are no longer waiting for the dance to begin, or the show to start, or to the meditation to begin, or to the love affair that you hope to have to start, then you self-initiate with a more heightened immediacy, a sanvega. So that's how we talk to ourselves, right? And so I keep trying to build this gathering momentum of urgency and metaphor and dance, aesthetic and sexuality, so that, yes, why wouldn't I fall in love more and more to this moment now with you or with Heidi or with anyone here, with all of us and those who are not here. So it's the way you talk to yourself and hold yourself accountable to the revolutionary medicine energy upsurging through consciousness. In this moment of meditation, how intimately aware am I making it? Only you're the one who's going to be accountable. So when you come to Burma for this 10-day retreat, those of you who are coming, you're held accountable first and foremost by your own authenticity. And that's so empowering to see hour by hour, sitting by sitting. I can be, I am, I can be, I am, I can be, I am. I'm in process, I'm in intimate elevation process. So you're falling in love, wow, this is really amazing. Then you just are silent, all of a sudden you're in the group sharing your experience, and you go like, wow, the immediacy of this is so breathtaking. And you feel a more poignant love with these people that exceed even a romantic love. So by way of saying, you determine, obviously, Alan, you determine, Margaret, you determine, Jennifer, all of us determine the authenticity of who we are, how we want to be, and the quality of genuinity that we want to bring to the immediacy of shared space. I want to meet life today, at this stage of life, more and more, as if it's the only day of my life. Like I've said repeatedly, I don't need to qualify it again, but I will. Everyone near and dear to me, outside of a couple of people, died. They're precious people to me. How many of us have lost people in the last 2 years? Can I see who you are? Look around in the room. Well, can I ask you to stand up? Let's honor those who are dealing with loss. Please stand. It's worthy to stand for those who've passed and stand for those. Look around at each other. Look around. We're all sharing a very colossal emotion with each other. And we can either deal with it from it was wrong and please sit down, or we can deal with the immeasurable existential rightness of it and take it higher. Let me tell a little bit of a story, if I can, Margaret, to others. I was in Boston, where I was born and lived for some part of my life with my extended mother's family. And after I left the monastery, I went there to see those whom in my family were still alive. And we were having a very large dinner at the family home, which was now inherited by my second oldest aunt, Evelyn. Her mother, my grandmother, Situ, and my eldest aunt, Olga, had passed away, along with my grandfather and a couple of other younger aunts. But now Evelyn was the matriarch of the family? We had a big family. We're all around the table. I've always been somewhat of I've always been scapegoated. I'm like a convenient place to just take it. And in my hyper-mystical Christian family, even though I have a high regard for Jesus and the Bible and Christianity, it was never really enough because I deviated and became a Buddhist monk according to these people. So I'm back And we're all hanging. And as a good Lebanese, Christian, Arabic family does, they let it all out. So we're eating lunch, and Evelyn, who had been living in this house her whole life, both my eldest aunt Olga and Evelyn, although Evelyn was married a brief period of time, the relationship didn't work out. She had one daughter, my cousin Carla, and she lived in this house her entire life. Olga lived in this house her entire life, 77 years. She died of emphysema. And then 25 of us at lunch, and everyone starts off eating in silence, passing around dishes, and you can hear the cutlery with 25 people being moved around. And all of a sudden, Evelyn decides to just start crying. I can't mimic it because I've got this microphone in my hand, but Evelyn is a passionate, radical, intense person. Like this, emoting, like making it clear, I want you to know I'm crying. Now, when you have a family where it all hangs out, you just let it all hang out. You know, Evelyn's crying. She wants more than just you acknowledging in silence that I'm fucking crying, you motherfuckers. Like this. And you can hear the psychological tension, like, oh, you know, okay, I know you've got some issues, but kind of reel it in. We're having lunch here. It doesn't happen a lot. Like, get it together. She stops mid-catharsis. This is a fucking full-on authentic story. Alan's the only one that fucking understands like this. He knows what it means to hurt and cry and be judged. And then she stops and throws down her fork and her knife and says, all of you, all you do is fucking judge me. Like that. It was like major theater. And past the meat, Evelyn doing their thing. She's not really getting the psychological, emotional attention that she's expecting. And she knows how to do it, which is to trigger them. Because she can't trigger them on her own. She has to trigger them where? Through me. Alan's a former Buddhist monk. He knows how to deal with people who are suffering. Then they all stop. Everyone stops and looks at me and says, you motherfucker, you say one goddamn word, you're out of here. That was the unspoken word. And you know me, you egg my ass on, you got a fucking fight on your hands. Evelyn looks at me and makes that kind of immeasurable stoned contact. And I says, Evelyn, and you can hear the forks and the knives just shut up. I said, Evelyn, I really do feel you. I loved Olga so much. And the tension was palpable. And I was really feeling it. I really knew how to isolate on the circumstances. Evelyn, I am so with you. What's happening? I mean, literally, none of them understand like that. None of them understand. Olga was my best friend. I lived with her my whole life. All of you are married with children and grandchildren. I have none. My daughter lives alone. Screaming out like that. You don't understand. You don't understand. You don't understand. You tell me you love me. You don't understand. You don't understand. I'm hearing these patterns. Alan understands. And I said, Evelyn, what is it that's really at the core of this for you? I loved Olga so much. I lived with her my whole life. The room is empty now like that. Okay? I could go on and on about this. I said, what would you imagine doing? I don't know. No one will talk to me. They tell me they love me. They don't talk to me. You and I are at least talking. I hope it stays that way. Khalid, make sure we get connected, okay? Don't wait until I die.
Yeah, I think just what I'm saying is that...
I hear you. Let me continue.
Okay, oh, you're still going.
Oh, I'm done. Hang in. So I suggested to Evelyn, I said, Evelyn, in Burma, where the Buddhists live, and that was like, when someone dies, they honor them even more than when they're alive. And what they do is that they take their photographs and important personal items and they build a shrine right in the most prominent place in the home so they can keep them actively alive. which is true. Those of you who come to Burma, you'll see this. It's quite profound. And therein lies, they don't wish for them to come back to life in the way that they were, but they reflect upon their values, their principles, the moments of those relationships that were so precious, and they do what they can to bring them into greater fruition in their own lives so they keep alive Olga through their friendships and intimacies. And of course, everyone knew where I was going with this. And I says, Evelyn, why don't you build a shrine to Olga? And so, as she did, she went to Olga's room. She didn't do it in the living room or the dining room. She went to Olga's room, which was the most prominent room in this big, big house in Boston. And she was a smoker. And she took the best chair in the house, put it up in the room, bought a mannequin, and dressed that mannequin in Olga's clothing every day differently. And put pictures of her there on that counter, sat in the chair, reflected on Olga. And it was an enormously healing process for my aunt, who then died somewhat in peace in taking the fear out of this loss and beautifying the experience. So, by way of saying, if there's any value in that story in your lives, beautify even the most horrific things. At the same time, I won't ask you to stand up again, but when they're gone, it's only a memory that's left. So when you have love, for me, I remember, when you have love in your life, treat those people in the most sacred way imaginable. Make them the most gifted experiences of our temporary sojourn on this planet. Reinvest your commitment in each other. Don't stand. I recently met a couple and I asked them, why are you separating? I said, most couples would marry because of the reason why you're separating. It's so fucking refined. But re-enchant the next level of dimension in each of our relationships. And so by way of saying, live through life, don't wait for it to loss, to grieve, to remember it through other people. Other questions that might be important to you? Comments? Take your time. Yes?
Very general. How do you build your vision of the future?
How do I build a vision of the future?
Aims.
What are my aims? I rarely will say this, but one of my favorite books that I read is a book that I personally wrote for my daughter that addresses this very question of my aspirations for the future. It's called A Future to Believe In. If you have interest, it's available out there. It's 108 reflections on the most important values that I've seen in life. It was meant not to be read, but to be picked up for momentary inspiration, any page, any time, any place. The 500 most important people that have influenced me are all involved in that book. And so I'd recommend that to get a longer version. But in short, I've said it before you got here, but it may not be obvious, but I, like some here, but for me, I live somewhat with a very severely broken heart. I sometimes place it upon past relationships that didn't work out, specifically one, but others as well. Is enough to counterbalance those projections with beauty. But when I do think beyond my logical mind and I look at data and emotions and the world and my reading, I feel that we're in for a very catastrophic, challenging, at the very least, near-term future. I've said these phrases before. I feel that we're in late-stage capitalism, which means the end of the fluency that we think that we have that allows us the ease of being, for movement, for shelter, for electricity, for transportation, for comfort. I think we're in a classic collapse from that continuity. Equal on an environmental level. It's obvious we've seen the incredible fires in Australia. We've seen what's happened in the Amazon. We know what's happening in many drought-stricken areas of the world, in Northern and Southern California. We know the immeasurable rise in sea temperatures based upon conservative estimates of the melting of the poles, the heating further of the atmospheres, the acidification of the oceans. We know multiple megacities that will be underwater in 30 years maximum, including Jakarta, Dhaka, Yangon, many, many, many big cities. The displacement of millions of people in urban areas that have nowhere to go, no idea of how to exist without the comforts of fossil fuel-driven urban presence, including this life here. We are in a catastrophic moment of challenge. My aspirations, my hopes, my dreams, within that, I'm a very durable person. I feel very resilient. I've mentioned several times, not as a badge of honor, but I've lived consciously and purposely in areas of extreme conflict, of incredible deprivation. I know myself in areas where there is nothing. What I don't know are the behaviors of others who've not experienced that. I don't have great faith in them. I've seen how good-looking boys and girls can do things they never dreamt of doing, even to their own family. I'm very aware of the opposite of that under duress and stress there are those rare individuals who rise to new heights of emotional and spiritual excellence and do things that are unthinkably noble, not just to their family or their loved ones, but even to perfect strangers. We're in for that level of challenge, and not sure challenge even touches the word. When I really hear the future, I bring it right back to today. How I live today is hugely important. Not just how I lived, what will I do today with the preciousness of my few breaths that I have left on this planet? What will I do with who I associate with? How will I look at her or him? What will I say? How well do I listen? What will I eat? How well do I care for the people that aren't in Ubud in my life today? How well do I write a text? What do I say in that text? I mean, everything really, really, really matters. When my grandmother died, before I became a monk, I went to visit her. She was 99 or 100 at the time. And she was moved side to side by two attendants. They had the money. Pretty much every hour for the better part of 5 years. She could not control any body part, yet she was cognitively clear when I saw her, and she was truly the mystical love of my life. I have great, great homage to my grandmother. And she looked at me through this haze of despair, and often, as she did when I was young, we would pick blueberries together in her garden yard, and I learned how to cook based upon her patience and diligence, and I also knew how to bake. And she looked up at me and said, "I wish I could make you a blueberry pie." Simple as that is, within that 100-year-old frame, there is an example for me to live tomorrow, today. You're not my grandmother, but you're my ally and my friend. What will I do with you today? What will I do as you look at me and I look at you in the intimacy of this moment? How well can I attend to properness together? I would want to say, how well could I fall in love with you? That's too much. You're not asking me to be in love with you. You're asking me to be real with you, honest with you, measured with you, decent with you. So I want to keep it in perspective when we talk about, for me, the future, but it comes right back to today. At the same time, there is the second part of this answer, which is tomorrow. And that's a really deep concern for me of where to be in the world. And this is why I'm taking somewhat emotional risks, like a lot of you are, to meet new people, go to new environments, go to places that I once been in a new way, and to find where I could find a home, a place to be doing the art and the work that I love doing. In fact, we're talking a little bit about Ubud possibly being a base for that, or at least some part of the year. I don't see any reason why not. And who do I want to acquaint myself and be near as a family? That's why I go out by offering this particular retreat, and Terry and Ian and Samantha's support, to offer it as a gift, not just to be altruistic to single moms, some self-serving motive to find family and tribe and land and location to possibly, I would say, live, and I'll conclude with this, and die. I will die, you will die, we are going to die. And many people whom are not ready to die beyond us will die very, very, very tragic deaths. Collapse means dystopia. So the last part of the answer, when I was confronted with a tsunami in Maui from Chile, we took to higher ground. I would plan and consider the word escape to places inside and outside that you consider to be safer zones of decency, where priorities are more intact with your integrity. I want to be near my daughter, so I'm going to be in places where she has access or near her. When it comes right down to it, it's that. Other times when I was under live rocket attack by airplanes with my friend Trey in the jungle, I tried to escape under the attack, and he grabbed me by the arm and threw a cigarette in my mouth and said, "Alan, you can't escape this. There's no place to go." In-breath, out-breath. So that's the dimension I hang out sometimes, you know. I am where I am, and relatively speaking, I want to be somewhere safer tomorrow. But should I not make it, I want to be in high accordance with the best of me with you and with you, and do what we can to hopefully evoke a miracle. And so I'm very hip on this concept of existential rebellion, which means thinking way outside of the box of transcendent psychological, emotional integration in my life, which is fine, but at the same time, we're the pioneers who are elevating to new places yet known, like a Sir Isaac Newton with his prism and bringing color to fruition where no one saw it before, except in rainbows. Giorgino or Bruno, the philosopher from Italy, who was hung upside down with his tongue cut out for seeing that the world was infinite, and the church crucified him essentially for not recanting that the world isn't infinite. It does revolve around the earth. We are the ultimate truth called the box of the church. So I have to ask myself, I'm very liberated, but where's my box? And so when I think of miracle, I want to think both of confinement and think of wild, out-of-the-world, imaginative expressions of unthought, unspoken behaviors. So my tantra today, if I wanted to close with this, is not so much sexual alone, but it's the imaginative, creative, artistic places where only heightened spiritual eroticism often takes someone. So that's why I go a little bit off on those metaphors of where is your spiritual eroticism, where's your mystical romance. It's a gentle way of talking about emerging beyond the box of comfort, familiarity. And I do believe human consciousness has its capacity. Consciousness beyond the human has the capacity. Evoke the deities that coexist with us to have the capacities to support the evolution of life to greater, more sacred, safe zones to ease this catastrophic collapse. So, and a more full version of that is in the book, A Future to Believe in. So, I don't know what time it is. What time? 11:15. 11:15. So what I'd like to suggest, if we can, is to take a 10-minute break, and from 11:25 until right about 10 minutes until 12, I'd like to have a silent guided meditation. So write if you wish. There'll be more time this afternoon to talk with radical honesty. Thank you for listening and participating. And please take a moment, keep the space silent, come back 11:25, and we'll have a guided meditation. Thank you.